New York City Police Detective Farrell O'Farrell was dog-tired. He was finishing up an 18-hour shift during which he'd had to race on foot from 41st Street to the Bowery to run down and pummel into submission a white trash meth dealer. Then he'd gotten into a bloody 45-minute firefight with a firefighter, had wild kinky sex with a Romanian hooker while trying to get the story on a Russian gangster boss, then used his rock climbing skills to scale the first 28 floors of the Empire State Building, to pluck a buck-naked hippie exhibitionist off a ledge and clambered back down with the guy in his back. What with all the running and screwing and hippie hoisting, well, he smelled awful. But now here was his police radio springing to life with a hated voice of Captain Quartz, his boss.
Get off your butter, Farrell, you lazy Mick, and get over to 23rd and Central in Flatbush. We got a gasoline truck explosion and some street-fighting bikers in front of a Starbucks.
But I'm off duty in 10 minutes, sir.
And I'll be off the can in 30. Time and a half, O'Farrell. You can buy a lot of Guinness Stout with that.
Farrell bared his teeth at the cloudy Manhattan skies, fired up the engine of his cruiser, and headed toward the bridge, sprinkling a big pile of cocaine from a salt shaker onto the back of his hand and snorting it up. That meth was wearing off.
What do you think I'm gonna give you a break when you just take and take? I'm gonna take you down. No heat is hotter than. Maybe your mama last summer got some blunt from a runner-up in 718. I know about it, I'm the buster that bust. Cuss me out cause I must bust in early May. Go ahead and murder out your ride, block it out, I don't mind. You can possibly go clubbing at the place. I'm in your face if you cross the line anytime. Don't forget my homie James Joyce, my DA of Joyce. He used to mix it up, funk it up, and throw down. Finnegans Wake, it was woke. Oh.
By the time he reached Central and 21st, he was back in control, except for when he plowed into the burnt hulk of the gasoline truck. No problem. He gunned into reverse before his wheels could catch fire. Where was that damn Starbucks anyway? He found it 2 blocks farther down. Central and 23rd, that sounded familiar. Lots of police cruisers with flashing lights, too. Something must have happened here. Something bad. He needed a cup of coffee to deal with it. Inside, waiting on his caramel macchiato, a cop approached him.
We've got one of those bikers in a booth, Detective.
Bikers? What's this about bikers?
Didn't Captain Quartz tell you?
No, he just said something about a fight between some bikers. The cop looked confused.
Maybe you ought to talk to this guy.
Why? We can't kick his ass here. Let's take him downtown.
Don't you want to ask him a couple questions first?
Ask who a couple of questions?
The guy in the booth.
A good idea. They called him for his macchiato. He downed half of it in one gulp. By the time he reached the booth, he was back in control. The suspect looked like he'd been through a grinder, but tough enough to break some of its gears. He looked like he could take care of himself, maybe even handle a bizarre fictional narrative in the first person. Farrell could care less. He took out his Coke shaker, unscrewed the top, emptied its contents into his macchiato, tilted his head back, and poured the rest of the coffee up his nose.
I looked up at the brawny detective. I'd never seen someone intentionally pour coffee up his nose. My kind of guy, a risk taker. But his voice was blurred by the sudden expansion of his adenoids. I had to strain to make out what he was saying. So, smart guy, what's your bike doing sticking out of the window of the third floor of this building? I smiled at him. Must have been the gas truck going up. Hell, that was 2 blocks past, on 21st. It was a hell of an explosion. Maybe so. So, what's with a lariat around your neck? Beats me. I used to be a cowboy in the 19th century, but... So, you're a wise guy, huh? His voice was clearing up. I liked that. Got any other cute ideas? Well, I anticipate robust growth in the next quarter for BMW shares. The guy took out his notebook and wrote the information down. "How about Apple?" he asked. "Come on, an antiquated record label? The Beatles are dead, O'Farrell. Wake up and smell the new millennium." "No, I mean Apple the compute." "Hey, how'd you know my name?" I'm Farrell O'Farrell and you're not baseball cap. But I know a lot more about you than that. I do some gumshoe work myself. I know you're a rock climber. Look at your fingernails, all splintered and filled with concrete. I know you got a little issue with the white powder, and I know you smell awful. But I can overlook that. Look, let's forget about this little gasoline truck explosion thing. Help me track down a couple of people. I have a feeling we could work together." "So who are you looking for?" "Just the guy who clamped an explosive device on my car. And I'm trying to find out more about a guy named Manny Parrell." "Manny Parrell, the international sax player." "That might be the guy, yeah." "Never heard of him, punk. And why don't I think you're really a gumshoe?" "Hey, lighten up, pal. We could team up on this." "Okay, I'll give you a chance, but no funny business. Now what about your friend on the motorcycle?" "I have a feeling he'll show up again. I'll let you know when he does." "This is getting too complicated, mister. What was your name again?" "It's Ayers," I said. "Legionnaires. And yeah, I know you've been through a lot today, O'Farrell. Maybe you should try one of these." I reached into my backpack and pulled out a vial with some yellow pills from which a strange glow radiated and handed one to O'Farrell. The police detective looked around to see if they were alone. "I'll try anything once," he murmured and popped it into his mouth. "Wait a minute," he mumbled. "I hear a pulsing exotic melody in my ears. Everything is fading around me. Only a tunnel of light and, look, a shadowy figure approaching the door. Now the door itself is dissolving. Look, a radiant robed figure bathed in a lavender glow. Hey, I know this guy. It's Lord Krishna, the Vedic godhead, divine prince of the entire universe. What's that you say, your divine majesty? We need to talk?" The dazed look in O'Farrell's eyes told me my interrogation was over. I slipped out of the booth and made my way back through the kitchen and out the back door, taking a couple of blueberry scones along for the ride. I looked down the darkened alley and wondered what my next move should be. Now I had an angle on Manny, an international jewel smuggler. Well, not anymore. Now he was in a holding pattern over pre-Columbian Manhattan. He'd been there a while now, and I realized the crows would be working him over up there. That would look really weird, flocks of birds congregating in the sky, ripping at the flesh of a human body floating in midair. Eventually there would be nothing left but the saxophone, sunlight glinting off its varnished brass, visible from miles away at sunset. That would look pretty cool. Wait, I had to snap out of it, get to the bottom of the case. Of course, the case. That must be where the jewels were. I had to get back to Laurie's place. Of course, she'd be angry as hell her BMW exploded, but a world-class collection of jewels can buy a lot of Beamers. I headed down the alley toward a side street leading to Central. That's when I heard the footsteps behind me. I stopped, they stopped. Just like in the movies, except this wasn't a movie. I made sure, checking right and left for cameras or a director in one of those big director's cranes that go up in the air. Nothing. I started walking again, and the footsteps were closer now. I began skipping along like a little girl, and I heard the same pattern echoing behind me. I tried a John Cleese silly walk, leaning back and sticking my legs out in front. When I stopped, silence. Then, very softly, a Woody Woodpecker call. This was getting ridiculous. I executed a couple Olympic floor exercise moves, including an acroline and 2 different saltos, finishing with a triple reverse overhead flip. I hit the ground perfectly in balance, but I couldn't move. I must have pulled something. That was when I sensed someone caressing my back and felt a wet tongue in my ear and heard the whispered words, "You're fine, so fine. Let me tell the world that you're mine, mine, mine." It was Jerry Lee Lewis. Except it couldn't have been Jerry. He was into pre-adolescent girls, not 280-year-old men. But that voice, I knew that voice. It was,
"Hey, Tiger, Why'd you ditch me like that when our little party was just getting started?
Laurie, how the hell did you get here?
Oh, I get around. I wasn't that drunk, and I'm not as stupid as those pink elves looking down at me from the tree think I am.
What did you say?
Never mind, tight buns. I followed you down to the parking lot and secretly slipped into the trunk of my own car. I was with you all the way to Brooklyn.
Hey, I'm sorry about the car. How'd you escape the explosion?
I know a couple things about locks.
I suppose Peril taught you that, right? I was starting to put apples and oranges together, but they didn't add up. And it was hard to concentrate. She had changed into a tight leather short shorts and a red see-through camisole.
Let's not talk about Manny anymore,
She said.
Let's get out of this alley and find some birds and bees.
I had no problem with that, except I still couldn't move. I think I hurt my back a little, I explained.
Poor baby.
Laurie said, and put one hand on my rock-hard pecs and began rubbing them up and down.
Wow,
She breathed.
some six-pack.
She changed into a circular motion and moved lower. My back started feeling better fast. I experimented with it by thrusting my loins forward, then back, then forward, then back again. I took a couple steps. My back was okay now, but I couldn't stop the loins. I tried to be casual and took a hand to lead her out of the alley, but my thrusting wouldn't stop. Talk about a silly walk. It was embarrassing. Laurie slapped me hard in the face, and it stopped.
Later, Tiger.
She said. I like that. I like a woman to slap me sometimes, or choke me, or even slather fermented pinto beans on my face. But more about that later. We reached the end of the alley.
Here's our ride, Legion.
She purred. Parked there was a gleaming new BMW 800 GS Enduro. This was making no sense. The big chopper couldn't have been stowed in a Beamer's trunk. But all I could think of in a moment was the cleft in her short shorts. Laurie climbed onto the seat, turned a key, and the motor roared to life. This baby had room for a passenger behind the driver, and she motioned me aboard. I put my hands around her waist and held on as she roared up to the corner, hung her right on Central, past the stunned police, and headed for Manhattan. Now, I'm the kind of guy who needs emotional intimacy in relationships. I like to take things slow and find common values. I need to hear a woman share where she is on her journey and in her creative life. So it was hard for me to understand what happened next. It was as if a cloud of pure sensual energy descended on us, and by the time we were on the Brooklyn Bridge, our bodies were joined together as one, both of us crying out in ecstasy, oblivious of the people pointing at us from the passing buses. But as we screamed off the bridge at 120 miles per hour, I finally realized I had seen this chopper before, and it wasn't the one lodged in a third-floor window. In a flash, I lost my, sexual function. Luckily, I always keep a cucumber in my backpack, and I was able to placate her. When we reached her apartment, on a hunch, I licked the tip. It tasted something like pomegranates with a touch of silicon and solder. No doubt about it now, she was a bionic woman. It really was she who had whirled that motorcycle around like a tennis ball. She lowered the kickstand, turned, and stared at me. My only advantage was that she didn't suspect I knew what she was.
I suspect you know what I am,
She said. I scanned the dimly lit garage. I didn't stand a chance against her if she went ballistic. I had to try to humor her. Skeleton walks into a bar and says, "Give me a beer and a mop." She stared uncomprehendingly at me. Finally, she rolled her eyes.
Comedy will get you nowhere, heirs.
I shifted gears. Oh, that this too solid flesh would melt, or that the everlasting had not fixed his cannon 'gainst self-slaughter.
Tragedy won't work either. Look, you play your part and you won't get hurt. Got it?
Yeah, I got it. So, what's the play?
There is no play. You might thank me for getting you away from the cops, and for our little bridge bang, too. Stay in touch. You know where to find me.
She turned and slank away toward the elevators. Believe me, that woman, or whatever she was, knew how to slank. I breathed a sigh of relief and watched her disappear into the shadows. It had been a long day. I needed a place to crash. I headed down the stairs and up 6th Avenue to Central Park. There was a secluded spot near the Balto statue, so I pulled my third millennium sleeping bag out of its flask, and it expanded and I settled down. The stars were as bright as 1,000,000 stars. I couldn't be completely sure, though, because it was totally overcast. But stars are always like that, right? I drowsed off trying to remember what my assignment was. Oh yeah, this Peril guy, he was going to destroy the Earth with some sort of technology he developed. Bionic people, something like that. There must be a connection somewhere. But I couldn't put my finger on it. I was so sleepy. And now Peril was dead? Seemed like there'd been a mix-up back at headquarters. Whatever, I wanted to check out that Sachs case. I decided to stake out Laurie's in the morning and wait for her to leave, then break in and case the joint. Then case the case. Then my eyes closed. I assume.
I was standing on the corner, Toulouse and Dauphine, just waiting on Marie Ardine. I was trying to place a tune